Hey everyone, this is Shintai. Today I have with me my good friend, the RPGSwagman. How are you doing, my friend?
How you going?
Yeah, I'm glad I could have you
And
on.
the awkward silence.
I'm glad I could have you on because you're about to go like offline. By the time this goes up, you probably will be offline. I could get you on
Yes.
beforehand.
For everyone that doesn't know, I'm pretty much going offline because I need to pretty much cut my expenses because I'm saving up to go on a trip to see the Distant Worlds Final Fantasy Orchestra, led by the one, the only Nobuo Uematsu.
I wish I could go, but I probably can't. I wanted to bring you on and discuss a few things, RPG stuff in general, because that's your main thing and that's my favorite genre as well. You said you wanted to talk about how YouTube is really a good way to just find new RPGs, games in general mostly, but specifically RPGs, because that's usually the genre has like most of the really rare stuff.
People don't realize how many RPGs exist in Japan versus what we have here, what you have in America, or the PAL regions. When you actually go to actually find out how many, it's quite astounding. What I use to find RPGs that I've never heard of is I go to GameFAQs. GameFAQs does a really good job of keeping a gigantic archive of pretty much every game that ever exists. And you can pretty much go to any system, and you can even click on the RPG genre, and it'll list all the RPGs that ever exist. If I'm interested in finding out a game on a certain system, I'd actually take whatever name that's there, put it in the YouTube search engine, and there's a good chance that someone would have uploaded a video or two.
Yeah, very true. That's actually a way I was able to find out about a lot of the games I have in my collection, specifically like the Shin Megami Tensei series. I first found out about it because of like Game Informer, shitty magazine, I don't recommend it, but they did some really crappy reviews of the game, which actually deterred me from getting it, until I actually saw the games for myself on YouTube, and I was like, fuck, this looks awesome, I should have picked this up, and it made me want to go and get the games.
Ages ago, yeah, I have the same thing. I didn't get into Shin Megami Tensei games until Persona 4, like really, really later on. Those games were more rare to get because they weren't issued in great quantities where I am. Persona 4 got more of a chance because the Atlas got Square Enix of all people to actually produce the PAL version of the game. Mm-hmm. What's terrible about that, however, it also works to Atlas's advantage because in Australia, no one really knows who Atlas is, but they know who Square Enix is. We have a shitload of Final Fantasy fans here, and it's a huge fan base that absolutely has incredible love for Square Enix. So when they saw that, they believed that was a Square Enix game.
I had a feeling that's what you were going with. I was thinking in my head that's probably what was going to happen.
Yeah, I always knew it was Atlas. They do actually show Atlas's name on there. Gamers who are not as passionate as I am will not realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Tri-Ace, because they have Square Enix, the ones that publish their games. Everyone always thinks these are Square Enix games. No one really realized it's not actually made by Square Enix, it's made by Tri-Ace.
The one common thing everyone needs to remember is whoever funds the money for the game will always have their name first, and usually the developer will be second. Sometimes you will have a game that's developed in-house and it'll just have their name first. Not common these days to have nearly up to 4 different parties a part of the game. I can't remember the last RPG that had more than 5, and you just think, holy shit, who did what?
It is kind of sad, though, that people kind of don't give credit where credit is due. But at the same time, though, it is good that Australians were able to play Persona. Because I started with Persona 3, and I think Persona 4 is definitely a good start for anyone who wants to just jump into the Shin Megami Tensei series.
Yeah, absolutely. The main thing I've been seeing is a lot of anime fans who don't necessarily play a lot of games, they love Persona, because there's so much in there that appeals for an anime audience. In terms of art style and how the game is presented, I say that anyone who loves RPGs, anime, or a good murder mystery, that's probably the biggest thing that I have to say about what I love about Persona 4. It's probably one of the best murder mysteries ever in a game.
Which, you can't really say much. There aren't a whole lot of murder mysteries in general, except for, I guess, Phoenix, right? Yeah, I can't really think of any other murder mysteries. So that is quite a rarity in the gaming industry in general.
Well, like I said, the best thing about a murder mystery is you're always guessing who done it. I'm not going to spoil it. I will not spoil it, but you will be surprised when you find out who it is. Let's just put it that way.
Personally, I actually kind of figured it out when I was playing it. Some people, it will be like, what? Even though I kind of figured it out when it happened, I was still like, damn.
So I might ask you right now, is there any RPGs that you're playing?
I'm actually currently trying to get through 2 RPGs. The first one is Trinity Universe. Is an RPG. I think it was made by Compile Heart. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It doesn't take itself very seriously at all. It's very lighthearted. I kind of like the combat system that it has, where it's not just traditional turn-based combat. When you go to attack the enemy, you input different commands. The X button, the square button, or the triangle button. This does a different move. Like, let's say you do square, square, X, X. You'll do a different fighting technique, as opposed to if you press, square, triangle, X, or something like that. The more AP you get, the more combinations you can do, the more you level up, you learn more moves, and you can do a lot of really crazy stuff, and the combat actually has some nice depth to it. I'm really enjoying it. Like, the only real thing that kind of bothers me about it, the in-game graphics, I mean, I'm not a graphics whore or anything like that, but they do seem kind of subpar. When you look at the cutscenes where it's just like animated portraits, there's just such a difference between the animated portraits of when the characters are talking to like the gameplay graphics. It's a bit jarring at times. Leaves something to be desired.
So some of the games on the PS3, you wonder why it's on there, because everyone knows how much space is on a Blu-ray disc, and you look at some of the games and you think, whoa,
like this guy at 3.
Yeah.
I love Disgaea 3, but that is not a PS3 looking game.
No, not at all. It seems like it can be late generation PS2. From what I've heard, they kind of try to up the ante a tiny bit with Disgaea 4, but I've only got a faint interest in the series because I've kind of stopped playing Nippon Ichi games for just a while, because I played, I think, 2 years worth, had my fill for a while. I might give Disgaea 4 a go. If I'm going to play a Nippon Ichi game, I might as well just go and play Disgaea, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I find with myself personally, I always have to be in the mood to kind of play Nippon Ichi's games specifically. Gus games is a little differently, even though it's like localized by Miss America. Nippon Ichi games specifically, like Phantom Brave, La Pucelle Tactics, Disgaea, I have to be in that mood because, I don't know, there's just something about those games that they have a certain charm and appeal to them. But yeah, for me personally, just gotta be in that mood. Otherwise, I'm not gonna go for it.
Yeah, well, the biggest charm of the Nippon Ichi games is they take the piss out of the genre, big time. That's what I loved about it. Playing Disgaea the first time, they really make fun of most elements, and that's what I loved about it. That's what sets it apart. If you're a completionist, and I say that game is a completionist dream, you need Buddha-like patience to play those games, because if you're expecting something extremely different every step of the way, you're going to be disappointed. Very much a stable strategy RPG. There's just a shitload of content in those games to have you playing forever until you had your fill. I like games that have a little more of a more cohesive narrative, and I usually go towards those games. I love my strategy RPGs. I rate Disgaea purely on gameplay, which is very high up. For all of you that's probably watched my channel, you know I'm a big fan of both Fire Emblem and the old Shining Force games. Those are what I believe to be the best strategy RPGs ever made.
In my opinion, the best strategy RPG ever made was Final Fantasy Tactics on the PS1. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, that was never released in Australia. We got our first version. We got our first version on the PSP with War of the White Lions. I played that, and I think it's friggin' brutal at times. I tried to grind in that game, and I found that difficult.
The reason is, and this is what I think is brilliant about that game, employs level scaling, but only in random encounters. If you try to go to a story battle, the enemies have set levels. But in random encounters, the enemies level up with you, which I think is actually kind of brilliant.
Yeah, it is, but you really need to keep your head on your toes, because this is one of those real difficult games. I kind of went in there for preconceived notion that it was going to be kind of an ego trip for me, because I've played so many strategy RPGs. Like, I'm like, this is going to be fine, and then I found myself eating my words very quickly. I've been meaning to give it another go, because it has so much charm to the game. I love the art style, and I do love the combat system. And I do love one thing I loved about Final Fantasy Tactics is the job system that's just done really well.
It's really deep and complex, but still intuitive. I thought that it was really great. I love how you can like take abilities from one class and like transfer it to another. Like you can have a black mage, you know, that can cast cure and stuff like that. I thought it was just really great the way it was handled in that game.
Absolutely. One thing I noticed was one of the other things that kind of sort of a small negative light on the game was I played Advance before then, and I didn't like Advance in terms of story.
I hated it.
Yeah, when I popped in War of the Lions, I'm like, oh, the story is really good.
Yeah,
so,
it's because it's political. It has a lot of complexities in the plot, and it deals with actually some like really, you know, controversial topics like religion and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was really like a shock for me playing it when I was younger. I was like, whoa, I can't believe we're actually talking about this. Holy crap.
The only game I'd say would be more controversial than that is Vandal Hearts 2. Have you ever played Vandal Hearts 2?
I played the first one. I really liked the first one. I beat it. I tried playing the second one. I still haven't. I still want to play it and I want to beat it because the story does seem really good. It's just so hard to play the game because the gameplay is so different.
If anyone wants to be shocked and close to gagging, type in Vandal Hearts 2 opening. That's one of the most brutal and sick and vile openings ever in an RPG. I'm just like, holy shit.
I know. I remember that opening. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
What the fuck is going on? It's Armageddon. But yeah, that sets the tone for the entire game. It really does. And you just want these bastards to fucking get theirs. Big time. That's what I really like in RPGs. When I did a video recently where I talked about RPG villains. Best villains are ones that can play on your emotions. And they're not just bits of data in a game. You have an attachment to them, whether it's one of hatred or understanding at the same time. But there's just guys that you just want to kill. That's what drives you to nearly finish a game. You just want to see how this bastard gets him.
It's such a simple but effective method. When I think of things like that, though, I usually think of, I know it's not RPG related, but like Hokuto no Ken, Fist of the North Star. I think it's the king of that sort of thing. You just see these dudes acting like assholes, and then Kentro comes in and blows their brains out.
Yeah, like I said, there's just so many damn good villains, and everyone. I do give this villain credit where it's due. However, he has a fan base that is quite, I would say, fanatical, and that's Kefka. You cannot go into a Final Fantasy forum without someone screaming Kefka.
Kefka beats the shit out of Sephiroth, blah, blah,
and
blah.
all that bullshit. But yeah, I do believe he's a well-written villain, because he does play on everyone's emotions, and you do want to see how the fuck he's gonna die. He was done really well.
Now, personally, I do want to play through 6. I haven't done it yet, and I'm kicking myself for not playing through it yet. I do want to, but the fanboys are what keeping me from wanting to really play it.
Really play it. Yes, I understand what you're going through with that, because that's what kind of put me off. And it's not the game's fault. It's like every time I think about Final Fantasy VI, you think of the fanboys and you just want to hate on it. But it's like, no. I personally liked this game. It's not the best thing since fucking Coca-Cola, but I give it credit for where it's due. The game does have some problems though. The biggest one for me is there's too many characters. There is so many characters in that game that just don't have a place in there. To the point that they're not really part of the story, they're just extra characters like Mog and Go-Go and all that. I'd say the first couple of characters really do have a connection to the story, but I think once they reach the 10th character, they've gone too far, because the ones you get after it, you just don't give a shit about. I don't give a shit about them. I pretty much use the first 6 characters, and I've used them throughout the entire story. Like I said, the one thing about FF6 that I do like is that it is told from many perspectives. Even though it's mainly focused on Terra, there's other characters with other stories. I surely believe that when they created Final Fantasy VI, they kind of had Dragon Quest IV on the brain in certain elements. It wasn't structured the same, but they wanted to tell a story from different perspectives, and I do applaud Square for doing that.
That's cool. I mean, like I said, I do definitely want to play the game. I mean, I really do love Final Fantasy in general, so I do want to play the game, but it does kind of remind me with like the situation with Final Fantasy VII. Fanboys just hype it up, and it's not the game's fault at all, because like with Final Fantasy VII, it is a good game, but it's really both on both sides. There are people who say it's overrated or it's the greatest game ever, and I don't think it's either extreme. I think games should be judged by its own merits, on its own, for what it does in the end of the day, you are your own best critic. You shouldn't have adopted someone else's opinion as your own. You should play it yourself and see what you think about it, and not just agree with everyone else just because it's the cool thing.
And that there, right there, is the secret to enjoying games. I mean, I encounter a lot of people that rate RPGs in this basic ignorant spectrum, that they're all the same. I play each game